The journey to Earth took 3 days aboard the human vessel Starbridge, though Admiral Chen explained they could have made the trip in hours if necessary. The ship was built for diplomatic missions, with comfortable quarters for dozens of different species and meeting rooms that could accommodate any known form of life. Ambassador Veltar stood in the observation lounge with the other council representatives, watching as they approached the Sol system. What he saw there challenged everything he thought he knew about civilization and engineering. The system was alive with human activity. Ring worlds circled several planets, each one large enough to house billions. A partial Dyson swarm surrounded the star itself. Massive collectors gathering energy on a scale that made the Council's most ambitious projects look like toys. Orbital stations dotted space like metal cities, connected by streams of traffic that never stopped moving. "How many people live here?" asked High Counselor Thexani, her voice barely above a whisper. Captain Martinez, their escort officer, checked his display casually. "In the Sol system? About 40 billion. Earth itself maintains a population of 8 billion, but that's mostly for historical and cultural reasons. Most humans prefer the orbital habitats or the ring worlds. 40 billion people in a single star system. The entire council represented maybe 12 billion souls across dozens of worlds. Humanity had more citizens in their home system than the rest of the galactic community combined, but the numbers were just the beginning. As they moved deeper into the system, the scope of human engineering became clear. Asteroid belts had been converted into mining operations that stretched for millions of kilometers. Gas giants wore crowns of floating cities that harvested atmospheric resources. Even the moons had been transformed, their surfaces covered with installations whose purposes Veltar could only guess at. "This is just our local infrastructure," Captain Martinez explained, noticing their stunned expressions. "We've got similar setups in about 12,000 other systems in this galaxy alone." 12,000? General Raxtar's voice cracked slightly. "Give or take a few hundred. We're still expanding, of course. The exploration fleets find new systems every year, and the construction teams follow behind them. It's a big galaxy, and humanity likes room to grow." Elder Wisp pressed her translucent face against the observation window. "How long did all this take to build?" "The Sol system development started about 800 years ago, right after we figured out faster-than-light travel. Most of it was completed within 3 centuries, but we keep upgrading and expanding. The ring around Jupiter is only 50 years old, and we're planning another one around Saturn. 800 years. The Council had been a major galactic power for over 3 centuries, and in that time they had managed to build a few dozen space stations and colonize maybe 200 worlds. Humanity had transformed thousands of star systems into industrial powerhouses in less than a millennium. Earth itself was the greatest shock of all. As the Starbridge entered orbit, Veltar expected to see a planet stripped bare by industrial development. Instead, he saw a world that looked almost untouched. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents dotted with cities that seemed to grow naturally from the landscape. "We keep Earth as it was when we first reached the stars," Captain Martinez explained. "Every tree, every animal, every ecosystem is preserved exactly as our ancestors knew it. We call it the sanctuary world." "But the population," Thexani said, 8 billion people. How do they live without destroying it?" "Very carefully. Most of our industry is off-world now. Earth produces art, literature, music, philosophy, the things that make us human rather than just another technological species. Everything else happens in space." The shuttle that took them to the planet's surface was another revelation. It descended through atmosphere thick with weather that would have killed most council species. Electrical storms that could power cities, wind patterns that could tear apart starships, pressure variations that would crush unprotected beings. But the humans had built their cities to work with these forces rather than against them. New Geneva, Earth's diplomatic capital, was a masterpiece of engineering that looked like a natural formation. Buildings that curved like hills, walkways that followed the flow of rivers, transportation systems that moved like flowing water. Millions of humans lived and worked there, but the city felt more like a garden than an industrial center. President Elena Vasquez, no relation to the captain despite the name, met them at the orbital elevator. She was an older woman with silver hair and eyes that held depths Veltar couldn't begin to fathom. Her clothes were simple, her manner casual, but she moved with the absolute confidence of someone who ruled a galactic empire. "Welcome to Earth," she said simply. "I hope your journey was comfortable." The council chambers were built into a mountainside, their windows looking out over valleys that had existed when humanity still lived in caves. As they took their seats, President Vasquez activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy from humanity's perspective. "I thought you should see what you're really joining," she said. The display was staggering. Thousands of star systems glowed with the markers of human civilization. Trade routes connected distant galaxies. Explorer fleets pushed into the void between galactic clusters. Military bases guarded against threats from dimensions the Council couldn't even detect. "This is the Terran Cooperative," President Vasquez explained. 412 member civilizations spread across 3 galaxy clusters. 2 trillion sentient beings representing over 8,000 distinct species. 2 trillion. The number was so large that Veltar couldn't even comprehend it. The Council's 12 billion people weren't even a rounding error in humanity's galactic community. "Most of our member species start where you are now," the president continued. "Confused, overwhelmed, maybe a little frightened. That's natural. You're seeing the full scope of galactic civilization for the first time." "How long have you been doing this?" Elder Wisp asked, her voice filled with something between awe and terror. "We made first contact with our first non-human species about 600 years ago. A nice people called the Centauri. They're still with us, though they've spread to about 300 worlds now. Every few years we encounter new civilizations. Some join immediately, others take time to decide. A few choose isolation and we respect that choice." General Raxtar leaned forward. "And the ones that chose to fight?" President Vasquez's expression grew sad. "Fighting humanity is like fighting a natural disaster, General. You can't win. You can only decide how much damage you want to take before you accept the inevitable. The lucky ones realized this quickly." She gestured, and the display showed battle scenes from conflicts that spanned star systems. Human fleets engaging enemies that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1 and winning. Weapons that could crack planets, defenses that could withstand the output of entire stars. Wars that lasted decades and left empty space where civilizations used to be. "We don't enjoy war," President Vasquez said quietly, "but we're very, very good at it. 600 years of expansion teaches you how to handle every possible threat. We've fought machine intelligences, hive minds, energy beings, creatures from other dimensions, and things that don't fit any category you have words for." "And you always won?" Thexani asked. "Define winning." "We're still here. Our people are safe, and the galaxy is more peaceful than it was before. If that's not victory, it's close enough." The tour of Earth's cities drove home just how different humanity was from every other species the Council had encountered. These weren't beings struggling to survive or competing for resources. They were artists and philosophers, explorers and dreamers, living on a world that had been carefully preserved as a monument to their past. In the Museum of Human History, Veltar walked through exhibits that showed humanity's journey from primitive hunters to galactic explorers. The violence was there. Wars that killed millions, weapons that could destroy worlds, conflicts that lasted generations. But so was the beauty. Art that took his breath away. Music that made him weep. Literature that explored ideas the Council's greatest thinkers had never imagined. "We are what we've always been," said Dr. Sarah Kim, the museum's director. "Predators and poets, warriors and philosophers. We fight when we have to, create when we can, and explore because we can't help ourselves." In the Hall of First Contact, Veltar saw displays dedicated to every species humanity had ever encountered. The successful integrations, the peaceful isolations, and the tragic conflicts. Each one was treated with respect, their stories told with care and understanding. "Even the ones you fought?" he asked, stopping before a memorial to something called the Stellar Republic. "Especially the ones we fought," Dr. Kim replied. "They deserve to be remembered. Their choices led to tragedy, but they were still people, still civilizations with their own hopes and dreams." The final revelation came on their last day, when President Vasquez took them to the Continental Observatory. The massive telescope complex was built into the Rocky Mountains, its instruments capable of peering across galactic clusters. This is where Sarah Chen sat in her small office deep within the Council station, surrounded by what appeared to be simple note-taking equipment. To any casual observer, she looked like a dedicated but unremarkable diplomat reviewing the day's proceedings. The reality was far different. The device she spoke into looked like a standard voice recorder, but it transmitted encrypted data directly to Earth through a communication network the Council had never detected. Her seemingly innocent questions during sessions were actually part of a carefully planned intelligence-gathering operation that had been running for 15 years. Today's session revealed tensions between the Krex military faction and the Trade Consortium, she reported quietly. The Krex want to expand their patrol routes into the Outer Rim sectors, but the Consortium fears it will disrupt their shipping schedules. Councillor Vex supports the Krex position, which confirms our assessment that the hegemony is preparing for some kind of expansion. Chen paused to review her notes. Written in what appeared to be human script but actually contained encoded information about military deployments, trade routes, and political relationships. Every human observer in the council chambers was doing the same thing, building a comprehensive picture of galactic civilization that went far beyond what any single species possessed. On Earth, the information flowed into massive analysis centers hidden beneath research facilities and universities. Teams of linguists, anthropologists, military strategists, and economists worked around the clock to understand not just what the council species were doing, but why they were doing it and what they might do next. Dr. James Martinez had spent his entire career studying the psychological profiles Chen and other observers transmitted. His latest report made for fascinating reading. The Vorthak rely heavily on psychic intimidation and assume all other species think linearly like they do. The Krex view everything through military hierarchy and cannot conceive of power structures that don't involve direct confrontation. The Ethereals consider themselves intellectually superior, but consistently underestimate the practical intelligence of solid matter species. Each species had blind spots, cultural assumptions, and predictable behavior patterns. The humans were cataloging all of them. Meanwhile, in the service corridors and maintenance sections of the council station, other humans were busy at work. They wore the simple coveralls of janitors, technicians, and food service workers. The council barely noticed them, assuming they were members of some minor client species contracted for basic labor. Marcus Torres had been cleaning the hegemony delegation's offices for 3 years. His job gave him access to waste disposal units, communication equipment, and private meeting rooms. The organic cleaning supplies he used contained microscopic recording devices. The trash he emptied included discarded documents that revealed military planning and resource allocation. The air filtration systems he maintained carried sensors that could detect stress hormones and identify when species were lying or worried. The hegemony is definitely planning something big, Torres reported during his weekly encrypted transmission. Their waste output has increased 40%, indicating they're working longer hours. They've been burning more documents than usual, and I've detected elevated stress markers in their private chambers. Plus, they've been requesting detailed maps of human space. Similar reports came from humans working throughout council territory. They served food in diplomatic restaurants, maintained communication networks, operated shipping facilities, and performed dozens of other essential but invisible jobs. The council species were so accustomed to having others handle their mundane tasks that they never questioned who these workers actually were. The information network extended far beyond the council station. Human trading ships had been quietly establishing supply depots and communication relays throughout supposedly empty sectors of space. They claimed to be independent merchants seeking profit in markets the major species considered worthless, but they were actually building infrastructure for Earth's growing intelligence operation. Captain Lisa Wang commanded one of these vessels, officially registered as the merchant ship New Horizon. Her manifest listed agricultural products, basic manufactured goods, and raw materials. Her actual cargo included advanced sensor equipment, military supplies, and specialized personnel disguised as civilian traders. We've established contact with 17 minor species in the Outer Rim sectors, Wang reported to Earth Command. Most of them have been ignored or exploited by the Council species for centuries. They're eager for fair trade relationships and reliable partners. The Krex occasionally patrol their systems but never stay long enough to establish real control. These minor species were proving to be valuable allies. They provided information about Council military movements, offered safe harbor for human operations, and began to see Earth as a potential alternative to the exploitative relationships they endured with major galactic powers. The Zilani, a peaceful aquatic species whose ocean worlds contained valuable minerals, had been paying tribute to the Kreks for generations. Human traders offered them fair market prices for their resources and helped them develop better extraction techniques. In exchange, the Zilani provided early warning about Kreks' fleet movements and allowed humans to establish hidden supply bases in their outer system. The Micros, a hive mind species of insectoid engineers, had been providing cheap labor for consortium construction projects while receiving minimal compensation. Humans offered them respect, fair wages, and advanced tools. The Micros responded by sharing detailed information about Council infrastructure projects and secretly installing human-designed monitoring equipment in facilities they built. Back on Earth, the planet that Council records described as barely capable of interplanetary travel was actually buzzing with activity. The modest space program visible to Council sensors was just the tip of an enormous industrial effort. Admiral Rebecca Collins stood in the command center of Luna Base, hidden on the far side of Earth's moon. Banks of screens displayed real-time information from across the galaxy, processed by artificial intelligence systems that could identify patterns and predict behavior better than any biological mind. We now have comprehensive intelligence on all 47 Council species, she reported to the Joint Chiefs of Earth's newly formed Defense Command. We know their military capabilities, their supply chains, their political weaknesses, and their psychological profiles. More importantly, we've identified the critical infrastructure points that hold their entire civilization together. The screens showed a web of interconnected systems, communication networks, shipping routes, resource extraction facilities, and manufacturing centers. What surprised even the human analysts was how fragile it all appeared when viewed as a complete system. The Council species had become so specialized and interdependent that disrupting key nodes could cause cascading failures throughout their territory. The hegemony controls the military patrol routes, Collins continued, but they depend on consortium shipping for supplies. The consortium controls trade, but they rely on client species for raw materials. The client species provide resources, but they need Council technology to process them efficiently. It's like a house of cards built over centuries. The most remarkable discovery was how little oversight existed for the underlying systems. The Council species were so focused on their political maneuvering and military posturing that they had essentially outsourced the day-to-day operations of their civilization to minor species, automated systems and contracted workers. Many of those workers were now human. Chen received new instructions during her morning briefing from Earth. The time for pure observation was ending. Humanity had learned everything they needed to know about the Council's strengths and weaknesses. Now they needed to position themselves for what intelligence analysts were calling the inevitable crisis. Continue your diplomatic duties, her handler instructed, but begin preparing for Phase 2. The hegemony is planning something that will force us to reveal our true capabilities. When that happens, we need to be ready to demonstrate that the quiet species has been paying attention all along. Chen smiled as she prepared for another day of taking notes in the back of the Council chambers. The other representatives had no idea that the humble human observer had just received orders that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. General Corvin of the Hegemony stood before the tactical display in his command ship, studying the simple lines that represented Earth's trade routes. The human system looked pathetically vulnerable, a single star with a handful of planets connected to Council space by only 3 major shipping lanes. It would be almost too easy. These humans have been watching us for 20 years, Corvin rumbled to his staff officers. Always listening, always taking notes, but never acting. They think they understand galactic politics, but they have never been tested. It is time to remind them of their place. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Hegemony patrol ships would establish security checkpoints along the shipping routes leading to Earth. Any vessel carrying cargo to or from the human system would be subject to inspection, delays, and additional taxes. Officially, this would be presented as an anti-smuggling operation. Unofficially, everyone would understand it as a demonstration of power. The humans will protest to the Council, predicted Colonel Vex, Corvin's intelligence chief. The Council will issue a formal complaint against our actions. We will agree to review our security procedures in exchange for some minor concession. The humans will learn that their observer status gives them no real protection, and other minor species will take note. It was a standard political maneuver, used countless times over the centuries to keep developing species in line. The hegemony had perfected the art of flexing their strength just enough to intimidate without provoking a larger conflict. The blockade began on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. Hegemony cruisers took up positions at the 3 jump points leading to Earth space and began stopping incoming traffic. The process was deliberately slow and bureaucratic. Ships that normally made the journey in hours were delayed for days, while their cargo was inspected and their permits verified. Captain Martinez of the human cargo vessel, Earthbound, was among the first to be stopped. He submitted to the inspection with polite confusion, asking only if there had been some mistake in his shipping manifests. The hegemony officers found nothing suspicious in his cargo holds, just the usual mixture of council-manufactured goods and Earth agricultural products. "When will we be cleared to proceed?" Martinez asked respectfully. "That depends on the processing time for your permits," the hegemony officer replied with obvious satisfaction. "Current delays are running approximately 72 hours. Martinez accepted the delay without argument and settled in to wait. His crew played cards and read books, showing no signs of distress or anger. If anything, they seemed almost bored by the situation. Back on Earth, the blockade was reported to government officials with the same calm efficiency that characterized all human communications. No emergency sessions were called. No angry statements were issued. The information was simply filed and distributed through normal channels. At the council station, Ambassador Chen received notification of the blockade during her morning briefing. She read the report carefully, made a note in her ever-present notebook, and continued preparing for that day's session as if nothing had changed. The council session proceeded normally. Various species presented their concerns about trade disputes, territorial boundaries, and resource allocation. When the time came for observer comments, Chen stood and politely declined to speak, as she had done thousands of times before. General Corvin waited for the inevitable diplomatic protest. Hours passed, then days. The human ambassador continued attending sessions, taking her usual notes and asking her occasional polite questions. She made no mention of the blockade, filed no formal complaints, and requested no emergency hearings. "Perhaps they do not understand what is happening," suggested Colonel. "Their intelligence network may be more primitive than we assumed. Or perhaps they are preparing a military response," Corvin replied grimly. "Even the most peaceful species will fight when cornered." Hegemony intelligence began monitoring Earth space more carefully, expecting to see signs of military preparation. Instead, they observed normal civilian traffic continuing as if nothing had changed. Human cargo ships still departed Earth on schedule, though they were obviously not reaching their destinations due to the blockade. What the hegemony observers failed to notice was that Earth's communication traffic had increased by 300%. Encrypted transmissions flowed constantly between Earth and seemingly empty sectors of space throughout the galaxy. The messages were sent using communication protocols that appeared to be simple commercial data transfers, hidden within the normal background noise of interstellar commerce. The first signs of trouble appeared in the hegemony's home systems 3 weeks after the blockade began. Minor technical failures started occurring across their infrastructure. Communication satellites experienced brief outages. Automated mining equipment required frequent repairs. Food processing plants reported contaminated batches that had to be destroyed. None of the problems were serious individually, but they were persistent and widespread. Maintenance crews worked around the clock to keep systems running smoothly. Supply chains began experiencing delays as equipment failures cascaded through interconnected networks. "These failures appear random," reported Chief Engineer Thorne during the daily briefing. "Different types of equipment, different manufacturers, different operational schedules. I can find no common cause." General Corvin studied the failure reports with growing unease. The timing was suspicious, beginning just days after the Earth blockade had started. But how could a species with primitive technology cause problems across multiple star systems? The humans had no access to hegemony space, no ability to sabotage their equipment directly. The answer came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Commander Zhao, one of the human merchants who had been detained during the blockade inspections, made a casual observation while his cargo was being examined. Interesting choice of crystalline matrix in your communication array, Zhao commented to the hegemony technician. That particular configuration is very efficient, but it can develop harmonic resonance issues if the calibration drifts outside normal parameters. The technician looked puzzled. How would you know about our communication systems? Zhao smiled apologetically. Sorry, occupational habit. I used to work in communications before becoming a trader. That type of crystal array is manufactured by the Micros Collective, right? They do excellent work, very reliable, but they need regular recalibration to prevent signal degradation. The technician made a note to check the calibration settings, thinking nothing more of the conversation. 2 days later, the communication array failed completely due to exactly the harmonic resonance problem the human had described. Similar conversations were happening throughout hegemony space. Human workers, traders, and visitors were offering helpful technical advice based on their experience with various systems. They seemed genuinely eager to help solve the mysterious equipment failures plaguing hegemony operations. It took Colonel Vex 3 weeks to recognize the pattern. The humans were not causing the failures, they were predicting them with impossible accuracy. Every system that failed had been mentioned in casual conversation by a human worker, days or weeks before the breakdown occurred. They know our infrastructure better than we do, Vex reported to General Corvin. They understand the maintenance schedules, the technical specifications, the failure modes of equipment we thought was classified information. It's as if they helped design our systems. The disturbing truth began to emerge as hegemony investigators looked more closely at their supply chains and maintenance records. The Micros Collective that manufactured their communication equipment had been working with human technical advisors for years. The automated systems in their mining operations had been upgraded with improved efficiency protocols, developed by human engineers. The food processing plants that kept experiencing contamination had been using filtration systems designed by human biotechnology firms. How long have they been involved in our operations? Corvin demanded. According to our records, at least 15 years, Vex replied grimly, but the involvement has been indirect, working through client species and subcontractors. We never dealt with humans directly, so we never realized how deeply integrated they had become in our supply chains. The implications were staggering. The humans had not just been observing the Council's political proceedings, they had been studying and infiltrating the technical systems that kept galactic civilization running. While the major species focused on military power and diplomatic maneuvering, humans had been quietly making themselves essential to the underlying infrastructure. General Corvin made a command decision. Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment to Earth space. If the humans want to play games with our infrastructure, we will remind them that military power is the ultimate authority in the galaxy. The hegemony battle fleet that assembled over the following days was impressive by any standard. 200 warships ranging from patrol cruisers to massive dreadnoughts formed up in attack formation. It was more than enough firepower to reduce Earth to radioactive debris. As the fleet prepared to jump to Earth space, Colonel Vex received The council chamber had never seen an emergency session quite like this one. Representatives from all 47 member species filled the vast space, their usual diplomatic composure replaced by barely controlled anxiety. For the first time in decades, even the most powerful species seemed uncertain about what was happening in their galaxy. High Counselor Zarin's voice carried a note of strain as he called the session to order. We gather to address a situation that has surprised us all. Recent events have revealed that our understanding of certain galactic relationships may have been incomplete. Ambassador Chen sat in her usual place at the back of the chamber, maintaining the same calm demeanor she had shown for 20 years. But today, every eye in the room was focused on her. The quiet human observer who had asked polite questions and taken careful notes was suddenly the center of everyone's attention. General Corvin stood to present his report, his massive frame radiating frustration. 3 weeks ago, the hegemony initiated routine security operations along the shipping routes to Earth. We expected a standard diplomatic response. Instead, we discovered that the humans have been more active than their observer status would suggest. The holographic display in the center of the chamber lit up with a 3-dimensional map of hegemony space. Red indicators marked the locations of the technical failures that had plagued their systems. The failures were not random, Corvin continued. They were the result of detailed knowledge about our infrastructure that should have been impossible for an outside species to obtain. Our investigation revealed that humans have been involved in the design, manufacture, and maintenance of critical systems throughout our territory for over 15 years. Murmurs of alarm swept through the chamber. Counselor Thys raised her serpentine head from her platform. Are you suggesting the humans have been engaging in espionage? Not espionage, Corvin replied grimly. Something far more sophisticated. They have made themselves integral to our operations without us realizing it. They are not stealing our secrets. They are helping create the systems that run our civilization. The display changed to show a complex web of connections spanning multiple star systems. Supply chains, communication networks, manufacturing facilities, and service contracts created an intricate pattern that few in the chamber had ever seen visualized as a complete system. This is the actual structure of hegemony operations, Corvin explained. The blue nodes represent facilities directly controlled by hegemony forces. The yellow nodes represent systems operated by client species and contractors. The green nodes, he paused for effect. The green nodes represent systems with confirmed human involvement. As you can see, they are everywhere. The chamber fell silent as representatives studied the display. The green nodes formed a network that touched almost every aspect of hegemony operations. Remove them, and the entire structure would collapse. Counselor Vex clicked his mandibles nervously. This cannot be accurate. The humans lack the industrial capacity for such extensive involvement. That was our assumption as well, Corvin replied. Our investigation proved otherwise. Show them the Kepler belt findings. The display shifted to show a seemingly empty region of space in the outer rim. As the resolution increased, it revealed something impossible. A thriving industrial complex built into what the Council had catalogued as a worthless asteroid field. The Kepler belt was designated as having no strategic or economic value, Corvin explained. According to our surveys, it contained only common metals and ice. When our forces arrived to secure this position for the current operation, we found a fully operational mining and manufacturing facility that has been producing goods for galactic trade for 12 years. The image zoomed in on the facilities, showing massive automated mining ships, processing stations, and what appeared to be defensive installations. More shocking still were the identification codes on the equipment. They were registered to dozens of different species, but all bore the subtle design characteristics of human engineering. The facility manager who greeted our ships spoke perfect hegemony dialect and had complete knowledge of our military protocols. Corvin continued. She informed us that the Kepler belt has been under human administration since shortly after they gained observer status, and that most of the rare metals in our current weapon systems came from this facility. Commander Torres, who had been introduced as the facility manager, appeared on the display. Her presentation to the arriving hegemony forces had been recorded and was now being broadcast to the entire council. Welcome to Kepler Station, Torres had said with professional courtesy. We've been expecting your arrival. I have the production reports for the graviton stabilizers used in your new Dreadnought-class vessels, if you'd like to review our quality control procedures. We're quite proud of our work on that project. The recording ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The implications were staggering. The humans had not just been observing galactic civilization, they had been actively participating in it, working through intermediaries and shell companies to avoid detection. Counselor Thys was the first to find her voice. How many facilities like this exist? General Corvin's expression grew even grimmer. Our preliminary survey has identified 43 similar operations in regions we classified as worthless or empty. Production capacity estimates suggest they could supply the manufacturing needs of several major species simultaneously. The display updated to show the locations of the confirmed human facilities. They formed a network that spanned the galaxy, carefully positioned in areas the major species had ignored: asteroid belts, gas giant moons, the outer regions of systems with no habitable planets. All had been quietly colonized and developed by humans over the past 2 decades. There is more, Corvin added reluctantly. Our investigation of the technical failures revealed that humans have been providing maintenance, upgrades, and technical support for critical infrastructure throughout not just hegemony space, but Council territory as a whole. The communication network you use to coordinate these sessions includes human-designed relay stations. The food processing systems that supply this station use human-developed filtration technology. The artificial gravity generators in this chamber were upgraded with human efficiency improvements 3 years ago. Councillor Zaran's rock-like features showed the first cracks of uncertainty anyone had seen in centuries. Are you telling this council that we have been dependent on human support without knowing it? That appears to be the case, Corvin confirmed. The humans have been quietly integrating themselves into our civilization while maintaining the appearance of being simple observers. They know our systems better than we do because they helped build many of them. Ambassador Chen finally stood up from her place at the back of the chamber. For 20 years, she had waited for permission to speak at council sessions. Today, she simply walked to the center of the chamber and took her place at the speaker's podium, as if she belonged there. Honored councillors, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. The reports you have heard are accurate, but incomplete. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several species began demanding explanations, accusations, and threats all at once. Chen waited patiently for the noise to die down, showing no signs of intimidation or defensiveness. Earth requested observer status 20 years ago because we genuinely wished to learn from your experience and wisdom, she continued. We have observed and we have learned. What we learned is that the galaxy is far more interconnected and fragile than any single species realizes. The display behind her changed to show a comprehensive map of galactic infrastructure, not just the hegemony systems, but the complete network of trade routes, communication links, resource flows, and service dependencies that connected every species in council space. Each of your species has developed remarkable expertise in particular areas, Chen explained. The Kreks are master warriors and engineers. The Ethereals are brilliant theorists and scientists. The consortium species excel at trade and logistics. The Vorthak understand psychology and negotiation better than anyone. She paused, letting the compliments sink in before continuing. But each species tends to focus on their strengths while outsourcing their weaknesses to others. Over centuries, this has created a civilization that depends on cooperation between species that often see each other as competitors or enemies. The map highlighted the critical connection points, the facilities, and services that multiple species relied upon but that no single species controlled completely. Humans have a different strength, Chen said quietly. We are generalists. We can learn any skill adequately, even if we cannot master it like specialists. While you were competing for political power and military advantage, we were studying the technical and logistical systems that make your competition possible. The revelation that followed would be discussed in diplomatic circles for generations. The humans had not just been maintaining galactic infrastructure, they had been gradually improving and interconnecting it, creating redundancies and efficiencies that no one had asked for, but everyone had benefited from. The council chambers had been in continuous session for 3 days. Representatives who normally spent their time in elaborate political maneuvers were now faced with a problem none of their traditional solutions could address. The humans had not attacked anyone, invaded any territory, or made any demands. They had simply revealed that the galaxy had been running on their support systems for 20 years. High Councillor Zaran stood before the assembly, his ancient rock-like features showing strain that few had ever witnessed. In his 3 centuries of leadership, he had dealt with wars, rebellions, and political crises of every imaginable type. This was different. This challenged the very foundation of how the Council understood power and governance. The situation is unprecedented, he announced to the gathered representatives. We face a species that has achieved strategic dominance without conquest, economic control without ownership, and political influence without holding office. Traditional responses do not apply. General Corvin had spent the past 72 hours reviewing military options with his staff. Every scenario led to the same conclusion. Force was useless against an opponent who had made themselves essential rather than threatening. Military action against Earth would be catastrophic, he reported to the assembly, not because of their defensive capabilities, but because of the infrastructure disruption it would cause. Our preliminary analysis suggests that a significant military campaign against human facilities would cause system-wide failures across multiple sectors of space. The holographic display showed the potential cascade effects of removing human support from galactic operations. Communication networks would degrade within weeks. Manufacturing systems would experience increasing failure rates. Food processing and distribution would become unreliable. The civilization that had taken centuries to build could unravel in months. Counselor Vex clicked his mandibles in frustration. Are we to simply accept that these observers have manipulated us into dependence? Ambassador Chen, who now sat at a temporary desk near the speaker's podium rather than in the back of the chamber, responded with the same calm tone she had used for 20 years. Honored Counselor, we have not manipulated anyone. We have simply done what humans do naturally. We adapted to our environment and found ways to contribute. By infiltrating our systems without permission, Counselor Thys hissed. By providing services that were needed and requested, Chen replied. Every contract, every technical consultation, every upgrade was approved through proper channels. The fact that you did not realize the cumulative effect of our involvement does not make our individual actions deceptive. The truth of her statement was undeniable. Human investigators had been reviewing the legal documentation for weeks. Every human facility, every technical service, every piece of equipment had been properly registered and approved by the appropriate authorities. The humans had followed galactic law meticulously, even as they were quietly reshaping galactic civilization. Dr. Vorthak, the Council's chief xenobiologist, presented his updated analysis of human capabilities. Their psychological profile has proven more complex than our initial assessment suggested. They display what appears to be an instinctive understanding of system integration and long-term planning that exceeds that of any species we have previously encountered. The analysis revealed patterns of behavior that explained how humans had achieved their position. They were natural systems thinkers, able to see connections and interdependencies that specialists missed. They excelled at finding ways to make themselves useful, often solving problems that others didn't even realize existed. They are also remarkably patient, Vorthak continued. Most species seek immediate results from their efforts. Humans appear willing to work for decades toward goals that may not become apparent until much later. This gives them significant advantages in long-term strategic planning. The economic implications were equally staggering. Trade consortium representatives had spent days analyzing the financial flows associated with human operations. What they found challenged basic assumptions about galactic economics. The human economic model is unlike anything we have seen, reported Consortium Director Malik. They appear to prioritize system stability and long-term growth over short-term profits. Their pricing for essential services is consistently below market rates, but their total economic influence exceeds many major species. The humans had been subsidizing galactic civilization without anyone realizing it. They had kept critical services affordable, maintained system redundancies that prevented major failures, and absorbed costs that should have been shared among multiple species. They had been quietly paying for the privilege of keeping the galaxy running smoothly. Why? Demanded General Corvin. What did they hope to gain from this strategy? Chen stood to answer, but this time her response carried a weight of authority that had been absent from her previous diplomatic statements. We gained exactly what we said we wanted 20 years ago: knowledge, understanding, and the opportunity to contribute to something larger than ourselves. She activated her own display, showing a comprehensive view of galactic civilization that no one had ever seen before. It revealed connections, dependencies, and relationships that painted a picture of remarkable complexity and beauty. Your species created something extraordinary, Chen explained. 47 different forms of life working together, sharing knowledge and resources, creating art and science and culture on a scale that no single world could achieve. But you were so focused on your individual contributions that you lost sight of the whole system. The display highlighted the critical points where failures could cascade through the entire network, and the redundancies and safeguards that prevented such failures. Most of those safeguards had been installed or maintained by humans. We wanted to preserve this, Chen continued. We wanted to ensure that the conflicts and competitions between species did not destroy the cooperation that made it all possible. We became the glue that held the system together because we believed the system was worth preserving. For the first time in 3 days, the chamber fell completely silent. The implications of what Chen was saying began to sink in. The humans had not been seeking power or dominance. They had been acting as custodians of galactic civilization itself. High Counselor Zarin finally spoke, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been respect. What do you propose we do now? The situation cannot remain as it was, with human influence hidden and unacknowledged. Chen smiled, and for the first time it carried no trace of the diplomatic deference she had shown for decades. We propose full partnership. Not conquest, not dominance, but recognition of the role we have already been playing. Humans will take responsibility for maintaining the infrastructure systems we have been managing informally. In exchange, we ask for full council membership and a voice in decisions that affect galactic stability. The debate that followed was intense but brief. The alternatives were unacceptable to everyone involved. Excluding humans from council decisions while depending on their systems for survival made no sense. Trying to forcibly remove human influence would cause civilizational collapse. The only rational option was integration. The vote was closer than many expected, but the outcome was inevitable. By a margin of 31-16, with several species abstaining, the council voted to offer humans full membership and a permanent seat on the governing council. The ceremony that followed was unlike any previous council accession. Instead of the usual displays of military might or economic power, the humans presented a gift to galactic civilization: complete documentation of all the infrastructure systems they had been maintaining, along with training materials that would allow other species to understand and maintain the networks they depended upon. This is our contribution to the Council, Chen explained, as the data was distributed. Complete transparency about the systems that connect us all, and the knowledge needed to keep them running. We ask only that decisions about these systems be made collectively, with the long-term stability of galactic civilization as the primary concern. The integration process took months to complete, but the transformation of galactic politics was immediate. Discussions that had previously focused on territorial disputes and resource allocation now included considerations of system stability and infrastructure maintenance. Species that had viewed each other as competitors began to understand their mutual dependence. General Corvin, who had initially seen humans as a threat to be eliminated, found himself working closely with human engineers to improve hegemony military systems. The technical knowledge they shared made his forces more effective, while reducing their maintenance, costs, and resource requirements. I still do not understand how they achieved this position without us. Noticing, he admitted to his staff, but I must respect their strategic planning. They accomplished more through quiet service than we could have achieved through a century of warfare. Counselor Thys had a similar revelation. The humans had not only been maintaining galactic systems, they had been studying the political and social dynamics that threatened those systems. Their insights into interspecies relationships proved invaluable for preventing conflicts before they escalated.